We'll do the quick countdown. And we're live.
Okay. Can I go, Michelle, Lynn? Are we good?
We're live.
Well, welcome to the September 26th meeting of the Ad hoc Special Real Estate Committee of URI. The meeting is being held in person with committee members participating remotely, like me. At this time, Board Secretary Michelle will conduct a roll call to determine if a quorum is present. Please respond present via WebEx or present in person when your name is called.
Michael Fascitelli,
Present.
Margot Cook, Vahid Onjazieri, Armand Sabatoni,
Present via WebEx.
Mark Parlange.
Present by WebEx.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. So the reminder to all members, for the benefit of the audience, when you're speaking, please note, identify yourself whenever you can, and make a motion or record a motion, or make a statement. Participants using WebEx are required to keep the camera on as remote members at the meeting location must be clearly audible. At this time, I would like to acknowledge that the University of Rhode Island occupies the traditional stomping ground of the Narragansett Nation and Niantic people. Are there any proposed amendments to the published agenda? None. Basically, then we can, I think, go right if there. Let's see.
Hey, Mike, I'm here. It's Margot.
Hi, Margot. Welcome.
Thanks.
Let's move to no motion, no amendments. Let's move to the agenda. May I have a motion that the University Board Trustees Ad hoc Special Committee is in session?
Executive session, so moved on Jazeera.
So then the first order of business is the approval of the minutes. May I have a motion that the committee approve the minutes of June 6th, 2024 meeting? Is there a motion?
This is
So
on,
moved.
so moved.
Second,
Second, Margot.
any discussion? There being no discussion, I ask for a voice vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried.
Excuse me, Margot, are you able to have your camera on?
Not yet. I will in a couple minutes.
Okay. If we could just have, it's fine for the minutes, but if we have other motions and seconds, if we could have someone different do it, because technically you need to have your camera on to participate.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
The next item on the agenda is item 2, discussion item.
Hey, Mike, I think somebody else has to second that motion Alyssa's saying. I can't do it.
Okay, can somebody else second that
I
motion?
second Vahid on Jazeera.
You made the motion first. Armin, can you second?
I do.
Okay, thank you. And everyone in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thanks, Alyssa. Okay, I think the next item on the agenda, I think is anything else before we move into executive session, Abby?
We do have one discussion item on the comprehensive campus plan.
Yes, can we go through that? Can you lead us through that discussion, Abby?
Absolutely. Excuse me.
This is item A, 3A, this update on the comprehensive campus plan.
Michelle, is it possible to pull up the slides?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So while the slides are coming up, I'll just remind the committee that the University of Rhode Island solicited proposals in November 2023 for architecture and engineering design services for a comprehensive physical master plan. I want to say thanks to this committee because the committee was certainly very encouraging of our effort to do this, recognizing that our old master plan was done over 20 years ago. In June of 2024, Sasaki, an international architect and design firm, was awarded the contract, and the project was launched over the summer. I'm here to give you a brief update on the project and the approach. Unfortunately, Sasaki couldn't be with us today, but they are certainly open to briefing the board or various committees as needed throughout the year to give updates on the project. So next slide, please. Next slide. Great. So as I mentioned, Sasaki is that center circle there. They're an internationally recognized firm that has done master plans at lots of universities around the country. They also have several partners that are participating in the project. So obviously URI is the primary partner as the client up in the upper left. BR+A is a firm that specializes in infrastructure and sustainability. I'll speak more about them later. And then the two firms on the bottom are partners that are helping with cost estimating and transportation and civil engineering services. So we have a great team working on this plan on behalf of URI. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, they can't be here today, but I just want to point out Tyler Patrick in the upper left. He's our primary principal for the project, but he brings a wealth of partners with him. One of the benefits of Sasaki when we went through the technical review process was that they're a very large firm, so they have lots of capabilities in-house. So while they are bringing some partners to the table, I would say the majority of the capabilities they have are coming from their own firm. So you just see some representative members here that'll be part of the project as it goes on. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, Sasaki has done a lot of master plans at various campuses. Here are just a few examples of similar campuses that are both land and sea grant institutions. I think they're very excited about that character of URI. So you see here, Michigan State University, Virginia Tech, Rutgers, and the Ohio State University are just some examples of similar large publics that they've completed master plans for. Next slide, please. Another bonus of Sasaki is that they have experience with URI. So you'll see here some pictures of our beautiful Brookside apartments. They participated in some of the design effort and also landscape design and also our South County bike path connector. So it's always helpful to have a firm that understands the unique characteristics of our campus. Next slide, please. This is just a broad overview of how the project is being governed. So on the very top on the left, I'll point out in the blue box, the project management team. Those are the sort of boots on the ground on the URI side. It's our planning and real estate development team and our facilities group that are going to be working on this plan throughout the year. And also Sasaki's project members. And then if you look down an arrow, the advisory committee, we have created an advisory committee that I'm chairing that's made up of various deans, vice presidents, faculty representatives, and student representatives to help guide the project. So that group will meet monthly, answer questions that Sasaki might have, get updates on the project, provide guidance where necessary. And then finally, the dark blue box on the bottom is the president's executive committee, which is essentially the president's cabinet. So we'll be briefing on the plan to the cabinet on a regular basis, and they'll also help make decisions and guide the plan forward as needed. Next slide. So this is a busy chart, but it's an overview of the project timeline. As I mentioned, as soon as the RFP was awarded or the process was completed and a purchase order was awarded, the Sasaki kind of hit the ground running with the discovery and analysis phase over the summer. That was really kicking off the project, looking at all our previous plans that we've conducted and starting their interview sessions. Soon we'll be moving into the planning scenarios phase, which is sort of the fun phase where they're looking at different futures for URI and different planning scenarios, which will then be looked at by the advisory committee and various stakeholder groups in the PEC to sort of decide what we think is the path going forward, and then the plan will be developed from there. The goal is to have a draft plan by June of next year that will then be reviewed over the summer and presented to the board for final approval in September. You'll see the blue dots are Board of Trustees meetings. Again, we are open to briefing the board at any time as desired on the progress of the plan. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just a brief overview of the approach. So as you see here in yellow, these are where URI is located in the state of Rhode Island. So the focus of the master plan, and I should say we kind of purposely have named it the Comprehensive Campus Plan as opposed to Campus Master Plan, which I think is sort of dated terminology. So the CCP is the acronym we're using here on campus. It will look at all of our areas in Rhode Island. The focus will be on the Kingston campus. That's obviously where our largest density of population is. The Bay campus, as you all know, already has a pretty comprehensive plan that was created prior to the bond issuances. So they will be taking that campus plan into account, and they'll be including the Bay campus in the plan, but they're not starting from scratch there, which is great. Alton Jones, we'll continue to talk to them. As you know, Alton Jones is closed right now, except for sort of research that's being conducted. So that'll be part of the conversation. And as you also know, our presence in Providence is shifting, moving the Shepherd building from managing that building to being a tenant. And we still have nursing there and several outreach programs, but that's come up a lot in the initial discussions we've had, sort of what is our presence in Providence? And I think Sasaki can help us with that. So they'll be looking at all of those areas throughout the process. Next slide, please. Of course, all the work will be guided by the strategic plan. So the comprehensive campus plan really is a physical manifestation of our strategic plan. So it's very helpful for the firm that they have this to build on. They've spent a lot of time with it and talking to stakeholders about it, and it will certainly guide the path forward on the plan. Next slide. I mentioned earlier over the summer, they've been doing a lot of discovery and analysis. We actually have several plans that they are using to do this work. There are a few of them just shown here. There is a transportation and master plan. There is a Bay campus plan. There's a drainage plan, a landscape plan, and many of you on the board have seen the recent housing and residential life master plan. So those will all be taken into account throughout the process and built upon by Sasaki. Next slide. So an important part of any comprehensive plan is engaging the URI community. This is just a slide that highlights some examples of how. So this is just a slide that highlights several ways that and tools that the group will use to engage the community, whether it's presentations. We will be launching an online survey and a website that the community can fill out, some open houses throughout the year, tours of the campus, and workshops. So the goal is to reach as many stakeholders as possible using this variety of tools. Next slide. So academic and space planning is obviously kind of at the crux of what this plan is trying to come up with, which is what are our physical spaces that we need. The plan will look at everything, interior spaces, exterior spaces, but wanted to highlight this because it is so critical. And this is just an example from some work they did at Northeastern where what's feeding the plan is really the direction we're going and the various scenarios. I mentioned earlier, they've developed scenarios based on discussions with us about our enrollment growth, our research growth, where do we think we're headed, and then translate that into what our space needs will be in the future, thinking about renovating existing spaces, building new spaces. So ultimately, you end up with a plan that will reflect kind of the baseline of where we're trying to head in the future. And the next slide shows a little bit more about how these sort of scenarios are built. If we go to the next slide. So this is a busy slide, but what I'll just show you is that each color here is a different scenario, and each block of bar chart here are different types of space. So it's academic space, it's research space, it's flexible space, it's gathering space. So based on the scenarios, they'll kind of play out what different kinds of space are needed. And this is just kind of an example of the work that they do to help us come up on the other end with a plan that we can act on. Next slide, please. So this is just another slide that shows examples of the kind of space that we will want at the university. It's academic, it's research, it's combined lecture and lab space, informal gathering space. So they obviously want to use industry best practices and look at what our current and future needs. So these are just some examples of design work for those types of spaces. Next slide, please. The student experience is key. I will say the faculty and staff experience is key as well, but this is a slide that just focuses on student experience. How are we making sure that students have opportunity to gather? How do we make sure that our spaces are multifunctional and especially flexible so that they can evolve as the campus evolves? And how do we make sure that they're individual and group study spaces? So again, just examples. We'll see more of this as the plan develops, but these are the kind of things that they'll be looking at to recommend for us as the campus evolves. Next slide. This is more of the same. It's not just, interior space. So there's outdoor gathering space, there's fitness space, recreation space. So it's really all about building community here. So as I mentioned, they look at interior space, but also our grounds and lands and grounds and accessibility. In the stakeholder discussion so far, accessibility, I think, has come up in every single stakeholder discussion. I know we've talked to the board about challenges we have with physical accessibility in our buildings and have addressed that in our capital improvement plan, but there's also sort of landscape. As you know, the campus has quite a topography to it. And so one of the things they'll be looking at is how do we make sure that there are pathways for our community members to make sure that all parts of the campus are accessible. So this is just an example of a kind of topography map of Virginia Tech University where they did a master plan. And then if you go to the next slide, it shows some more examples of the kind of work they do to look at elevations, for example, of a campus, and then what are the pathways that we know we can create to make sure our community can move around effectively. So that will also be one of the things that they are looking at extensively throughout the process. Next slide, please. So here it's not just about physical accessibility. That's what the last two slides were about, but it's also just about all sorts of accessibility. So here you see some things that can be put in place to address, for example, vision issues or cognition issues or hearing issues. So it's all forms of accessibility that the plan will take into account. Next slide. Okay, I mentioned earlier that the BR+A is their infrastructure and sustainability partner of Sasaki for this plan. I want to point out that separately through a strategic initiative, URI had put an RFP out for an energy master plan, and that's a facilities-focused master plan that looks at our aging energy infrastructure to try to identify opportunities to improve it, to look at decarbonization goals, to sort of have a facilities-focused approach on our energy at URI. So BR+A, through a competitive RFP, was awarded that contract, and that plan has kicked off, but they're also the partner of Sasaki. So these two circles here represent the energy plan happening as a core that's really facility driven, but then the campus comprehensive plan that Sasaki's working on will kind of bring in peer information and community information around sustainability. So while Sasaki's working on some plans that have already been completed, this one's happening in tandem, which I think actually is useful on both fronts. Margot, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I mean, do we have, you mentioned it, but I haven't seen carbon goals or do we have stated goals?
So I would say the university has stated goals from a prior administration that haven't been actively revisited. And I would venture to say that they're not part of our active conversation around where we're trying to go. So one of the goals of this master plan is to sort of restart that conversation. And that will happen through this process.
Yeah, that's something I definitely want to talk about at the board. I mean, that's like an obvious outcome of this is to state those goals and build that into the plan. And I don't want to surmise what they should be, but we should have some stated goals.
Absolutely. Thanks for that feedback. So the next slide just shows what the goals are, more of the energy plan. So looking at how we optimize our resources, what are our carbon reduction goals, our decarbonization goals. Long-term financial planning is really important. Obviously, anything we want to do on the energy front will require significant resources. So part of it is what can we do? What are the sources of funding? How can we be more effective in trying to get state funding or federal funding? There are a lot of other opportunities that perhaps URI is not bringing resources to the table. So one of the goals of this is, what are the menu of options to get where we want to go? And then how do we figure out the resources to get there? So those are some outcomes of the energy plan. Next slide, please. Okay, just an update on next steps. So this is just a zoomed in view of the sort of summer and where we are to date. We are, as I mentioned, over the summer there was discovery. They're actively involved in stakeholder interviews right now. We actually had Sasaki on campus last week. I had a gathering of my organization, which is a lot of the administrative units on campus, including facilities and lands and grounds, and they came and did an interactive session and got feedback. So they're going to start, keep doing that and then move into the scenario development. And then I think the next slide is a list of stakeholders. So you can see a broad list from the president's office, the provost's office, every college, every school, the libraries, all the vice president's offices, student senate, faculty senate, graduate student. The board is not explicitly listed here, but as I mentioned, we certainly would be open to a session with board members if there's interest to get, an interactive session to get feedback on the plan. And I'd be happy to talk about what the timing is, what the best timing is for that. And then that's it. So that's just an overview of the approach to the plan. Again, I've appreciated the board's support of this effort, and we're just getting started, and I'm looking forward to the outcome next year. Armin, do I see you raising your hand?
Yeah, did they participate in the master plan of the Bay campus too?
I don't believe Sasaki participated in the master plan of the Bay campus. I'll look. I do have my colleagues, Carl Calvo and Ryan Carrillo, who are really leading this effort on here today, so they can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct. They were not part of that. That was led by Ellen Zwig.
Ellen Zwig.
Architects.
So Ryan, when they did the Bay campus, whoever did that, did they analyze the land that the university owns west of the actual footprint of the Bay campus up Ferry Road to Boston Neck Road?
So that's actually a focus of Sasaki in the current comprehensive campus plan, is to do a land use analysis of all of the land that we have and understand where we have opportunities for future build out.
Yeah, that'd be good because, they should really look at whether or not off Kingston campus, we can create housing all up that Ferry Road, almost as a complex there for students that want to live off Kingston junior and senior year. And, they're parked all over Kingston and Narragansett. But if we created our own community on all that vacant land, especially if the P3s go well, we can probably solicit some developers to look at that.
Yeah, I'm sure, in the sessions I've been in, obviously housing is forefront at everyone's mind, and that will be one of the things that they're giving us guidance on. And I agree there are opportunities. We're trying to focus on the P3 we have now, which we'll speak about later. But thanks for that. Thanks for that feedback.
Yeah, because the other thing, the zoning on Ferry, it goes from residential to multi-use to commercial. I mean, it's wide open. That road is wide open.
Does it make sense to have them at some point separately do a presentation, or does it have to be a board meeting now to this group and get some feedback in person? I know you intended to do that today. They couldn't make it, and you did a great job representing them. But it might be, between Armin and, others, I'm personally, as everyone knows, is not familiar with the campus as others are, obviously, but I think there could be ideas that come out that could be useful.
So I'm happy to work with Michelle on that. It may be that the November meeting is an opportunity for them to come and do a more interactive session. I'll defer to OGC and Michelle about if we can do something outside of the board to get feedback outside of an official board meeting. So we'll follow up on that.
I think it's a good idea. I think Vahid's right. This committee should do it first, and then the board could obviously do it in maybe a little different, higher level.
Great. Excellent. Any other questions?
One thing, Abby, just, Tim, when they do this growth, and I've seen these before, and they had a slide saying a basis, is it 0% growth, is it 5% growth, student growth? But the type of growth makes the difference. If it's graduate student growth versus undergrad growth, that makes a difference. If it's research driven, that may make a difference in needing labs as opposed to not regular space. So I think you have to get the growth parameters and assumptions broken down a little further, and including, like Armin's point, if Providence is a growth area, that would be a little different master plan if we're not growing in Providence. So I just think those types of growth have to be broken down a level more in that chart that you showed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think those determining enrollment scenarios really involves a lot of stakeholders on campus around, whether it's undergraduate, to your point, graduate, research growth. So that's why that big list of stakeholders are going to be part of the conversation so that we could really, and obviously the leadership is going to have to sign off on the different scenarios that are presented and then what's actually kind of selected to build the plan on. And there are a lot of factors that go into that, as you know, so.
Anybody have anything else? I think the next, are we gonna go into executive session? That's next, I think, Abby, that's it.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more point, which I didn't mention earlier in response to Margot's question. We are looking, the state does have stated climate goals, so we are looking at the state's goals, and as a state agency, we're in touch with them, and we're part of their efforts around lead by example, for example, which is, it's called lead by example, it's the state's executive order on sort of climate and decarbonization. So that will also feed into the energy master plan discussions. So I just wanted to add that point.
Great. So you have anything else, PIB, before we go into executive session?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abby. I guess the next order of business is to convene an executive session. Let me get the motion. May I have a motion that the ad hoc special committee convene into executive session pursuant to Rhode Island GL 42645A5 for discussion or consideration related to the acquisition or lease of real property for public purposes, or the disposition of publicly held property whenever abandoned, whenever public interest, whatever public information would be detrimental to the public interest. And RIGL 424667 5A7, as it relates to the question of the reinvestment of public funds where the premature disclosure would adversely affect public interest, including update of the university housing and preliminary development transaction for the new university housing P3 public-private partnerships, and 5IGL 4246 5A5 for discussion or consideration related to the acquisition of lease of real property for public purchase or the disposition of property, held property, whereas advanced public information would be detrimental to the interests, including the use of W. Alton campus, development of properties on or around campus, and URI's property acquisition and use planning. One more, RIGL 4246 5A7 for discussion of matters relating to the question of the investment of public funds where the premature disclosure would adversely affect the result, specifically on the update on the URI campus store. I need a motion for all of that.
This is Almond, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Vahid?
Heath, thank you. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. With that, let's convene into executive session. Hang on. Where are we, Abby? What are we gonna discuss?
I think we're not quite in executive session yet, so.
So we're going into executive session shortly, and for all of those participating via WebEx, if you could just confirm by saying yes, that no other person is present or able to hear the executive session discussion at your remote location.
Yes.
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 Okay, so what will happen is you will automatically go into the breakout session, and you'll be prompted, if you are not in the breakout, to hit the join now button. Thank you.
think we're all automatically muted. Mike,
On, good. Michelle, we ready?
And we're back and we're live. We're
Thank you.
in open session.
Okay, the first, the ad hoc special committee is now back, converged into open session. The first order of business is open session is a motion I need to seal the executive session minutes. May I have a motion?
so move Vahid.
Second? Amen, can I get a second? Amen? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I second.
Okay, thank you, Amen. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes, any discussion? Any opposed? Okay, no oppositions. Then the motion carries. So the next item on the agenda, I think is to adjourn. May I have a motion for adjournment?
Amen, so moved.
Second,
Vahid, second.
thank you. All in favor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, no, any opposed? Abstentions? Great, the motion carries. The motion to adjourn is approved. I'll see you all tomorrow, I hope.